Hello, everyone, and welcome to another interview of our series for the Law Marketing Zone group. Today, I'm very excited to welcome Robert Ingalls. He's a podcast strategist with Law Pods from Raleigh, North Carolina. Thank you for joining us today.
Hey, it was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about your journey from attorney to a podcast strategist. Tell us how that plays out and what you're doing now.
Sure. So I think like a lot of people who perhaps ended up in law, I finished with my undergrad degree and thought I'd always considered law school, but I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. And it was like, well, I'm super good at school, so why don't we do some more school? And I went to law school, and I think as the same for a lot of people, you get there, you're used to kind of skating by, and you get there and you're like, wow, this is a lot harder and everybody's super smart around me. And so that was the first step in going, oh, I'm not sure about this. But I powered through it, and then I ended up practicing for almost 7 years, but it wasn't a great fit. That's a story for another podcast, but it wasn't a great fit for me. I really did give it a try, several different practice areas. But during that process, I had discovered podcasting and became a hobbyist. I actually started one out of the law firm I was working at, and then was doing some myself. And then I was teaching it in the community because not a lot of people knew it. And long story short, as I was transitioning out of law, I was looking for something else to do. I'd got a job at a bank, but that's not what I wanted. And I'd started identifying this niche that existed in business podcasting. I was seeing consumer behavior shift. I was watching what Google was starting to do with podcasting. They were starting to get behind it. And I really thought that it was something that had some legs to it. And this was really before a ton of businesses were doing it. And so I got in early. I kept my day job, but I got in and started looking for clients. I found my first one, and, it was a real slow process in the beginning, but I think anybody listening to this can kind of look around and see it like it's happened. And that was it really started happening in 18 and 19. And now businesses, it's not odd that a business would have a podcast, even a smaller business. And so I was able a couple of years ago to transition full time to doing this. So that's the nutshell journey.
Okay. Yeah. Podcasts I find absolutely fascinating. I do remember when they were first starting out and it was hard to find anything of quality. And now almost, most businesses have something along that lines, or we all listen to them anyway, whether we're taking walks or, on the treadmill or something like that. So,
sure. I was going to say that's when they started, there was a lot of entertainment, mm-hmm. and there was a lot of motivation, inspiration, entrepreneur. Right. And that was really the bulk of what was going on there. There weren't a lot of businesses offering information. And that is really what started to pivot over the last couple of years, is businesses have recognized that consumers do want to listen. Mm-hmm. And so if I offer them information, which I was doing on my blog already, I was doing it on my YouTube channel already, but it was kind of crickets out there. And now there's a way to make it and put it into a place where people are already gathering their information, getting their entertainment, and make it easy for them to also get that information from you if they want it.
Right. Now, one of the things that I promote in the group is doing things like KLT videos and things like that, the know, like, and trust things, and making content that way. Now, I do know people that are taking the audio tracks of their know, like, and trust videos or any of the blog videos and using that for podcasting. Can you go into a little bit more detail about how you see a podcast done used for marketing for a law firm, and how you would go about helping someone do something like that?
Sure. So I like that idea, and that's what they're doing with their taking that video track and turning it into a podcast. I'm a big fan of that type of behavior. That's what we call repurposing content, mm-hmm. and we do a lot of that with our podcast audio and turning it into other things. And what you're doing is, with a video, you are making content that somebody is interested in hearing. And obviously, we're also making it for SEO purposes. We want Google to see that we have content on our site that's engaging, that people would want to listen to. But the problem that you run into with video and written content is, when you create it, you're asking someone to give you something, and that's time. You're asking them to stop what they're doing and watch your video. Mm-hmm. You're asking them to stop what they're doing and read your blog post. The unique thing that is, in my opinion, responsible for the explosion of audio is audio asks you for nothing. Audio asks you to hit play and keep doing it. You just said it. walk the dog, clean the house, drive to work. You don't have to stop what you're doing. And depending on your job, you don't even have to stop working to listen. You can listen really and gather that information or be entertained in any platform you want. And so, like I was saying earlier, I saw this happening. I saw this consumer behavior shifting. And so I got into it. And I'll give you a little idea of what it is that we help people do. The biggest barrier that we saw when we started was, going back to what I said earlier about time, was time. Lawyers didn't have time. They were convinced they didn't have time. That's still one of the number one things I hear. I don't have time for a podcast. And they really hope it goes away so they don't need one. I have super bad news for those people. I don't think it's going anywhere. But so we had to figure out a way to make it as easy as possible. How can we give them this high quality podcast that sounds good, that has good content and information that people actually want to listen to, that is available in all the places that people want to listen to it, but without taking a ton of time? And so that is where we came up with how we practice, and our basic slogan is, you do the talking, we do the rest. And so for the bulk of our clients, some like to be a little more involved, but the bulk of our clients will go to their calendar that we set up for them. They will schedule a time that works for them. They will add a guest if they have one. And then they will click on that link at Tuesday at 10 a.m. And then they show up. They're on our platform. We have a producer there that talks them through like sound, making sure everybody sounds good, levels are good, hits record, conversation takes place, the lawyer hangs up. And for a lot of them, that's the last time that they interact with the content at all. Sometimes we'll have a marketing team.
I'm sitting at my desk at the appropriate time. I click on the platform and talk.
Yeah, it's very much like what we're doing right now. Like for this call, I showed up, I'm talking to you. And then when I hang up, that's basically the end of it for our clients. We're going to then take that audio. We're going to edit it for them. Really, our job, our philosophy on editing is make the lawyer sound as smart as possible while leaving no trace. And so we're going to take out the ums, the uhs, the excessive you knows, the awkward pauses, anything that doesn't add to the conversation that we can take out without making it disruptive to the ear. We're going to take out. We're going to mix in those professional voiceover intros and outros that are really going to up the professionalism of that podcast. People hear that, national speaking voice brand. When the podcast comes on with the soundtrack, then you go in, your audio sounds good because you're working with us and we set you up with audio that sounds good. And so when they listen to it, they're going to hear something a little bit different. They're not going to hear a lawyer sitting at their desk, speaking into their laptop microphone that's really distant and echoey with doors slamming in the background. And there might be good information there, but it's not a good listener experience. A lot of people are going to be turned off by that experience. And that's one of our value propositions. We want to come in and make it not only good content, but make it sound professional. And then from there, we're going to write show notes with SEO in mind. We're transcribing your episodes. We're creating micro content. We're repurposing your podcast episode into dozens of pieces of micro content. That's video memes, little short video clips that you can share across your social media. That we're going to make quote images. We're going to make audiograms. We're going to pull that episode apart, turn it into lots of things. You can use your transcript as white papers. There's newsletter information from your podcast. There's so many different ways that you can take that content and repurpose it into much more. So a lot of our clients have really reformulated their content marketing strategy and made the podcast the cornerstone of the strategy, because it takes so much less time to create all that content than trying to sit down with like a blank page.
Right. And that's the whole thing. I made a video not too long ago about during these holidays, you're not going to be working as hard as you do normally. Take some time and just batch a bunch of content. Get it done, get it out there, get it ready, and then schedule it out. You can make it easy on yourself to do this, but it sounds like your team does all that for you. So.
Yeah. And batching the content is a great idea. That's something that we promote as well. And a number of our clients they'll schedule 3 episodes back to back on Monday morning or Friday morning or whenever they like to record, because they can just sit down, they can carve out a morning, and then they're done for the month. Right. And then that's it. That's their commitment. And then now they have their podcast. So it's a lot easier than trying to keep up with it.
Do you recommend weekly, bi-weekly, monthly? What do you recommend as far as how often to podcast?
I mean, weekly is the sweet spot for a few reasons. A, there's consistency behind it. You keep it going, but it's also going to create more content, which is what you're going for. And it's not just random content. You want to create content that's engaging, that's answering questions. And so another question we get frequently is, well, how will I know what to talk about? That sounds like a big question. It's not. It's a very simple question, because one of the first things I do is I'm going to print out your SEO. What are people searching for? What are they finding you for? What are they finding your competitors for? There's 100 things right there that we go through and make an episode about all of those things, because answering that specific question is what people are searching for. So that's going to help you rank. But also outside your ranking, when someone does land on your site, you know that's what they want to know. And that's frequently, for most clients, especially people like family, PI, criminal, people are showing up because something has gone wrong. There's a problem and they need you now, but they have questions and you want to answer those questions. And that's where that, know, like, and trust you were talking about earlier comes in, is you got them on your website. It's your game to lose now because they're there. What are you going to do to make sure that they don't go somewhere else? And that podcast content helps because they click play. So now they're not only getting an answer from you, they're hearing your voice. Right. They're getting to know you. They're getting a feel for your sense of humor or lack thereof. Like, that really might be something that this client's interested in, because not every lawyer is for everyone. They're getting a vibe for who you are, because you're going to ask them when they come into your office or call you on the phone at the end of that call. You're going to ask them for a relatively substantial commitment, whether it be signing that contract to do a PI case together or putting down 10 grand to go on this family law journey together. Mm-hmm. And if they say, well, let me get back to you, the odds of ever hearing from them again go up dramatically. And so everything you can do prior to that phone call to move the needle with them, to get them to know, like, and trust you a little bit more, is going to be helpful. And hearing your voice is big on that, because the moment they get on that call or they sit across the table from you and you open your mouth, they already know you. They already got this positive vibe for you. And now, it's just your job to keep pushing it down the road.
And that's one of the things that we talk about too, is your content makes you approachable. The everyman, as they say, wouldn't feel necessarily comfortable knocking on the door and just talking to an attorney. But if we know you, we can tell who you are, we can listen to you. It makes a huge, huge difference being approachable.
Yeah. I tell people, think about like a cocktail party podcast, because people sit down in front of the microphone and they immediately put on their speaker voice, where they want to talk very formally and kind of monotone sometimes. And that is the opposite of what you want. You want to be more informal. You want the person listening to feel like they're at a cocktail party with you and they're standing just to your left while you are telling them and a couple other people about whatever it is you're talking about. And if you're having a conversation with a guest, this person is standing beside you, overhearing that conversation. And when you're at a cocktail party, you're not giving a weird monologue speech in your professional voice. Honestly, the professional voice almost shouldn't exist, in my opinion, especially in today's climate. No one wants it. We want to be relaxed. We want to feel like the person we're listening to is a person, and that we're just sitting in the room listening to them talk. We want to hear who they are. We want to hear personal stories. How personal is really up to you, but let them in a little bit. Let them hear a story from why did you get into PI? What happened that drove you towards doing family law? Things like that. And then just stories of your cases. Those are really helpful too, because stories engage people. And then don't be afraid to be funny. That is, funny is relatable. When you can just make a small joke or make light of something that's going on, that is going to resonate with people. It's going to make them comfortable. It's going to let them know that you are someone who, while you clearly know what you're talking about, because you've just given them all of this information, you're also not uptight and stodgy. You're relatable. You're the kind of person they wouldn't mind spending the next 18 months working with.
Right. Okay. So say that I'm looking to do that. And it's like, all right, sounds like a podcast would be a good idea. What would be the steps, and how would that work into my marketing? What is it? Okay, you said SEO. So am I going to be listed in like iTunes and the different podcast directories? or is it mostly on my website so that I'm getting SEO juice out of the whole thing? Tell me a bit about what that's going to do for my firm as far as growing my firm.
Sure. So all of it. So I tell people, if you're going to have a podcast, it needs to be on your website. If it's not on your website, I don't even know that I would necessarily have one. I don't know that it's worth all of the work involved, or, if we're doing it, I don't know if it's involved. I don't know if it's worth paying us to do it if you're not going to take the small steps to get it onto your website, because your website is your home. That's your storefront now. And you need to be constantly building it. And this is what a lot of this content is for, is to drive people back to your website with SEO. But once they're there on your website, that they have content that they can then interact with, that they can get answers to their questions with. One of the mistakes I see people do is they will have a link to their podcast. Very good. When you click that link, it will then just be a page with another link that says, click here to listen on Apple Podcast. Very bad. That's not what we want. We're driving traffic away from our podcast, away from our page, our podcast page. What we want is people to stay on our page. Ideally, it'd be great if they didn't leave at all. If they got what they wanted and then either booked an appointment, sent a message, made a phone call, one of those things. Now, with that said, you do absolutely want links to all the places they could listen: Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts. You want those links because that is allowing the listener to listen on their own terms as well. Some people don't want to stay on your website. That's a big thing about podcasting: on the go. They don't want to sit on your website and stay there. Allow them to, make sure it's there for SEO purposes, but also put those links there. And that goes to the other part of your question is, yes, it needs to be on Apple, Spotify, Google, TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeart. It needs to be everywhere people are listening. Now that is, for us, that's the easy part: distribution. That's boom, boom, boom. We set up your feed and then we make sure it's everywhere out in the world. And it's all very automated on our side. But you want it in all those places so people can find it there, so they can listen to it there on their own terms, on the go, however they choose to. But at the same time, it absolutely needs to be on your website. It needs to be easy to find as well. It shouldn't be buried in a third sub menu. It's important content that's answering the burning questions that people showed up wanting to know. Your homepage frequently will tell them how great you are. You've been practicing law for 900 years combined. No one is better at this. We are aggressive. And we're telling people all those things about us, but they're not really necessarily there for us. They're there to get answers to their questions, to feel just comfortable enough to say, okay, these are my people. And everyone kind of has that same story of, we're here for the little guy. Right. And
we fight for you.
Right. We fight for you. And that's good. I mean, I think it's important that people know those things, but answers to their questions need to be front and center as well. Why are they on the website? Because something happened. And, more and more, and it's not slowing down. People want answers to their questions before they want to even make a phone call. They want to gather information. They want to research. So make it easy. Make that podcast easy to find. And on that podcast, don't just chitter chatter about whatever's going on in the world. A little of that's fine, but every episode should be dedicated to answering some kind of question that people are there for. Now, a lot of that was geared towards smaller firms that are doing things like PI, doing family, doing criminal. The medium-sized and even big law firms that we work with, some of them are thinking a little bit more along thought leadership lines. This is things we want other attorneys to hear us talking about, to brand us as the expert. When something happens in international tax, when transfer pricing issues come up, I want to be the first person putting out an episode discussing what the implications of that are. Now, that's good for potential clients and existing clients to hear, but it also brands you as a thought leader among your colleagues, because this new thing happened and you've been reading through it and you really can't make any sense of it. But Dan just released a 30-minute comprehensive episode breaking down exactly what I need to know. Now my practice is easier. I can advise my clients better because of what Dan said. Dan has just earned a lot of credibility with me, right? And so those can be really important angles as well from, thought leadership for different kinds of firms. If not, the smaller firms can't do that as well. I have a lot of small firm clients doing thought leadership stuff as well, but it's most clients are really thinking first and foremost about grooming clients to get that know, like, and trust factor up to then turn them into clients.
Okay, that's fascinating. I love the way that you're putting it together out there and helping understand what happens. Now let's get a little bit, elementary, if you would, to step back out of the podcast terminology. most of us are aware of and have been told you need a blog. You need a blog. But what I've seen is obviously the podcast written out, transcribed in, and that becomes a blog post. Is that something that you advise? I mean, how are you putting these podcasts on the website? Is it a blog type environment?
Yeah, thanks for that follow-up, because I definitely didn't hit on that. And that is super important, is we're going to then edit that post. And earlier I said show notes, but I think you're right. That was terminology. What are show notes?
Yeah.
And so what you really want to be looking at doing is taking that written content and summarizing it first. This is what this content is about. This is what you can expect to hear. We really like timestamping important moments, because if somebody has one specific question and you pull it out and timestamp it, we set it up so you can click that timestamp on the website and it just starts playing at that moment on the podcast player. And that just makes it very accessible and easy for people to listen to. But you want to summarize it because you want to get all of that information onto the website so Google can scrub it. But then from there, you're putting your links in there that to anything that you may have talked about, a study that you want to link to, a video, a book, any of that stuff. You want to make sure your links are in there, but then adding that transcript to the website as well, and then linking that transcript, anything you talked about throughout the entire episode, linking that transcript. All of that is SEO gold, which is a big part of having the podcast. There is that know, like, and trust connecting with the clients, but SEO is every bit as important, in my opinion, to having the podcast. That's why I say, if you're not going to put it on your website, I don't know that I would do the work.
Right. And like you said, weekly being the sweet spot, Google and Yahoo and Bing will see that you're getting a constant update to your website. Because I remember in the early 2000s, we faked that. We did RSS feeds and stuff just to make it look like things were changing. Now you can really do a change every week, update your website with new SEO every week. And it's really, the text is already handled, and all you've done as the attorney is had a conversation.
Right. And exactly what you said, consistent, relevant content.
Yes. Wow. This is probably the easiest understanding of how a podcast can help a firm grow and be more of their marketing and SEO. Thank you so much. That's a lot of good information. Any last thoughts that you would suggest for an attorney thinking about doing a podcast?
It's not as hard as you think it is. Even if you wanted to do it yourself, it can look daunting, but really it's as simple as a computer and a USB microphone. And you take that USB microphone, you plug it into your computer, and there's a multitude of platforms that you can use, whether online or something you can download. Most computers already have a recorder on them. You plug that mic in, you hit record, you talk, and you're done. And, the technical side of it can take a little bit of work, but it's not super complicated, especially if you have somebody marketing on staff. If you're not ready to hire a company like mine that does comprehensive, turnkey work, you can still get the benefit of the podcast in your small firm by just plugging in that USB microphone and talking. And it's going to be better than not having one at all. Audio content is coming and people are starting to expect it. And so as people start to expect it, Google's starting to expect it. And they launched Google Podcasts for that reason. They're buying into audio. They understand that that's what's coming, and we need to be there to meet it.
Well, they saw the beauty of video when they bought YouTube. So that says a lot
Right.
when they do the podcast. Okay, well, Robert, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate all this good advice that you've given us about podcasting and how we can do that and how you can help. If someone wanted to reach you to learn more about what you do and see if it makes sense to work together, how would they reach out to you?
Lawpods.com is the easiest way to find out a little bit about us, see what we do, and then connect with us, set an appointment right there. But also feel free to reach out directly to me at robert@lawpods.com. And then across social media, we're always at Lawpods.
Okay. All right, great. So what I'm going to do is, just for anyone watching, I'm going to put his contact information above this video. So feel free to reach out to Robert if you have any questions. Obviously, it sounds like podcasting in the way that he's doing it, the way that it should be done, is a massive improvement in your SEO. And over time, it's only going to do really good things for your website and your marketing. So again, thank you so much, Robert. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your insight, and hopefully someone will reach out to you that will need some help.
Hey, I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us for another series, another interview in our Law Marketing Zone series. And have a great day.